You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Utah Hockey Club. As always, I'm Jack Bushman, joined by Robyn Leano for a fun little crossover episode ahead of these two teams getting into training camp, and also both of these two teams facing off on the opening night of the regular season. We'll be recapping what's gone down for both of these clubs in the offseason, the buzz around the Utah Hockey Club and their inaugural season. Then we'll wrap things up talking about the Central Division a little bit for segment 3. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder that today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Be sure to go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, use the promo code LOCKDOWNNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. Robyn, it has been a while since we have last chatted. It has been an eventful offseason for both of these two clubs. Before we kind of dive into that, how are you doing here on this Thursday afternoon?
Oh, not too bad. You know, it's now we're now hitting September, getting ready for hockey season to come close. In fact, for Utah hockey fans, hockey season is here already. The rookie showcase coming up just this weekend. So like they're excited for hockey to come back.
Same here in Chicago, the Tom Curvers Prospect Showcase in St. Louis, a first little taste of Blackhawks unofficial hockey going down tomorrow, and then training camps opening up the following week, preseason hockey less than a couple of weeks away as well. And next thing you know, we're going to be full swing into the regular season in the middle of the fall. Very excited for things to get underway. But Robyn, first things first, when talking about this Utah Hockey Club, obviously it's a big change for you and for the organization. There have been lots of rumors around the future home of this team for years and years and years, and you have been covering it for this organization and been there through it all. So I'm just kind of curious as to the emotions when the decision became final for this team to move out of the state of Arizona, your initial reaction to that, and also just kind of your feelings around this team now that it is in a different state. What's kind of been the feelings around just that entire process, really? Because I'm sure it's been a lot.
I think it's really real, Jack, when people talk about the stages of grief, and everything like that. Like the same applies for losing a hockey team, right? You go through those stages. And I'll tell you right now, I went through those stages a little bit quicker than a lot of still remaining Coyotes fans out there. And all of them just will not, still cannot accept it. I know that for a fact. And, I don't blame them. They still feel like their heart was ripped out. They were Coyotes fans for years. I was a Coyotes reporter for about 8 years. So like, not as much as a lot of these fans were, but I still had that emotional connection. I still felt that. When the news came out that the Arizona Coyotes were moving to Salt Lake City to become what we now know as the Utah Hockey Club for this first year at least, probably going to be Yeti after this. But I think initial was shock and then sadness for me, honestly, even because I was like, I'm losing the team that got me my start in my career. But now here I am. I'm like, you know what? This is an opportunity. I have an opportunity to finally get back to just not even worrying about arena drama or ownership drama anymore. I get the focus on the hockey. And I think that's one of the most important things is to be able to talk about the hockey. It's such a breath of fresh air that I couldn't be more excited.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you have that perspective, because I'm sure there are those difficult times where you're missing like that baby of yours, like that you've known for so long. But as you said, this is kind of a cool, different opportunity than what you've gone through these last few years, where there were all these behind the scenes dramas, whatever they were. There were so many different of them. Now it feels like this is this fresh start and this new ignite into a better direction that I think is appealing, and you can just get to the actual on ice stuff. And believe me, I know about off ice unfun activities that you have to talk about and how it can kind of take away from the fun of the game almost, Robyn. So it feels like you're at least going into this year with a very positive atmosphere, and that it's just going to be cool. The focus is just about what's going down on the ice with this Utah Hockey Club.
Oh yeah, so many times I have made the joke while I was doing the Coyote show because you could see my gray hairs coming in on my it was because it gave me so much stress. And don't make it wrong, I loved doing it. I loved covering the Coyotes. Like I said, the team that got me my start. I still live here in Arizona, and I still have a huge connection to the team. Heck, if it weren't for them, I probably wouldn't be playing hockey. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my jerseys that I have that I just got from a tournament. It's again, if it weren't for the Coyotes, I wouldn't have been able to fall in love with actually being on the ice on top of starting my career. So I had a huge connection on that case. But it's like I said, at the end of the day, it's a business, and just being able to talk about hockey though is, like I said, it's nice, and especially how good of a team this is supposed to be. It's not going to be a phenomenal team. It's not going to be the back-to-back Lightning. It's not going to be the the Chicago Blackhawks of the early 2010s. It's not going to be that. We're looking at a team that's on the rise and has so much rising star potential that you want to tune in to watch this team play.
And we'll get there in just a second, Robyn. But first, I do got to ask about the Utah name, because I personally love the Utah Yeti. I feel like most people have kind of agreed upon that. They hope that will be the name of the future. Or do we have any official update or anything on that sort of news front whatsoever?
There is no official news on what the name is going to be yet. To me, I feel like what's happening is they are waiting until the orders are able to be, fans are able to put in orders for jerseys for the Utah Hockey Club first. Again, this just shows you the business side of things, so they can get those jerseys, and then it's like, oh, by the way, our team name is going to be the Utah Yeti. But it seems for all other cases, you talk to Clayton Keller, you talk to Bill Armstrong. Bill Armstrong he even leaked it during the draft, and Clayton Keller mentioned it just a couple days ago. He's just like, yeah, it really feels like it's going to be the Yeti, isn't it? Everyone says that. And if that's the case, they just honestly, why not just say it now?
Yeah, it almost feels like it sounds like it's one of those open secrets that's it's not officially written down yet, but everyone's kind of expecting things to go in that direction. But Robyn, it sounds like you have a lot of excitement about this Utah Hockey Club in their first season in Salt Lake City. Kind of give me a little bit of an explanation as to why you feel this way about this team.
Yeah, if I feel like for the first time, you're going to, first of all, you're going to see another full season under some of the top 6 players like Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz and Lawson Krause. But you're now able to factor in Dylan Guenther again for another year, Logan Cooley in his sophomore year, Josh Jones going to come in as a top 9 player. A lot of these players are moving on their way up. Matthias Maccelli had a phenomenal rookie year before he got injured, and then his sophomore year even surpassed expectations then too. They're only getting better year by year. The only question mark, really, I'll be honest with you, Jack, right now is their goaltending, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just who's going to rise to be the de facto starter. They don't really have a true elite starting goaltender, but maybe in the competition, one comes up this year because of how good the rest of the team is going to be.
And one of the main things that I noticed, Robyn, when kind of taking a look at Puckpedia now, as Cap Friendly is unfortunately no longer in use, pour one out, because that was literally my favorite website of all time for a decade. And that's how I feel about Cap Friendly leaving is probably not the same as how you feel about this organization leaving Utah. But that was a heartbreaker for me seeing Cap Friendly go. But when diving into Puckpedia, one thing that looks really solid is this top 4 defensive unit for this Utah Hockey Club after getting Mikhail Sergachev here in the offseason. Can you talk a little bit about how big of addition that is on the blue line, and how big of a piece he is along with Sean Dursey there in that top 4?
Yeah. Mikhail Sergachev certainly was certainly the big piece that everyone's talked about that Utah picked up. Especially it was dropped in the middle of the draft, just like in that day too. It's like, oh, here's a trade. Sergachev going to Utah. He really is going to be that number 1 defenseman. I feel like that's kind of a no-brainer, especially looking at what he's capable of. he's coming off an injury, so that's going to have a huge question mark on exactly how much of an impact he's going to make. But in my opinion, given what happened to the Arizona Coyotes in the last couple of years and their blue line is kind of struggled a little bit, it makes sense to say, all right, yeah, definitely Sergachev is going to be the number one guy. But you add Durzi to kind of go into the rest of the top four. Honestly, I don't think he's going to be that top line. He's not going to be the same pairing as Sergachev, despite what NHL.com and so many other people think is going to happen. I just don't think that's possible. You put them as a decent, one side on a first pair, second pair. That just shows you where the depth's going to look like. And for the case with that Sergachev trade, yeah, sure, you're losing a pretty solid defenseman in JJ Mosier, and also a prospect in Connor Geekie, a prospect forward in Connor Geekie. But again, you're getting a guy like Sergachev who has, despite the injury, has the potential to be an all-star defenseman.
And trading away Geekie in that deal, you do still have Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley. The last question I have for you, Robyn, before we turn things over in segment 2 is, what are kind of the expectations for both of those players going into the season?
I feel like the expectations, I don't know. I think looking at where they're going at right now, they've only been getting better, right? You take a look at, for example, Logan Cooley's first year. Right, he looked phenomenal. At first he was a little bit slow. I was like, damn, I'm not sure if he's gonna get to that Calder caliber, but he's been getting better. He's been getting more comfortable with his line, and he understands his role at the NHL level. And Dylan Guenther, I've talked about this on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club show. A lot of my everydayers already know this. He has become, as what scouting reports have said him to be, as a true goal scorer. That is his job. He goes out, finds the right lanes, and just gets a beautiful shot on. I have never seen a guy that just has the IQ to get where he needs to be and get the shot on as a true goal scorer like him at his age.
Well, I'm really excited to see both of those guys go up with Connor Bedard multiple times throughout the course of the season, especially on opening night, the first game in the history of the Utah Hockey Club. Coming up in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Robyn for some Blackhawks-related questions. Make sure to stay tuned. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next ball game or big event that you want to attend. And I'm here happy to announce that Game Time is an official authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both faster and easier. Plus, prices actually go down the closer that the game gets to the first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And for those who are tuning into this episode from Locked On Blackhawks, you'll know my spiel. I actually have been using Game Time for probably close to a decade now. When I was going down to the United Center in high school, watching the Blackhawks in their heyday, I always use Game Time, and I still use it to this day, going down to the UC, or when I want to go check out Wrigley Field, or even go and see a comedy event with one of my friends. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app, because it's the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way for you to purchase all of your tickets. And again, go and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL when you download the app and create an account, and that way you'll get $20 off with your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. All right, back here on the Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you all for making these two shows your very first listen. And just a reminder to make the Locked On NHL podcast your second listen of the day, where the action never ends, with local perspective from all of our great Locked On NHL hosts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Robyn, for segment 2, gonna turn it over to you. If you got any Blackhawks related questions, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost, I feel like the big question is talk about what's Connor Bedard looking like. We already know about his first year. We already know how great of a rookie year he had. And now he's going into a second year. What's the expectation for him going into year 2? And again, we'll just start with that, and I'll add a follow up from there.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, for Bedard, Obviously a lot of people are going to be expecting him to take a massive leap after a pretty solid first year in which he netted the Calder Trophy, which I think he rightfully did. I know Minnesota Wild fans and my very good friend Seth Topal might think differently, that Brock Faber might have deserved it, but considering who was out there on the ice with Connor Bedard last year, I know he didn't reach that point per game margin like some of us expected him to. He didn't hit the 30 goal plateau, but he was injured, and so were the Blackhawks for the majority of the year. And even when healthy, they really didn't have a whole lot of help to put up alongside Connor Bedard. Philip Kurashev, who I give a lot of credit to for taking that opportunity, getting that top line job and running with it and having a career year. I mean, that was a guy who hadn't posted 20 points in a season until last year with Bedard. And that was basically his right-hand man. And Nick Foligno, who I absolutely love and is a great and respected veteran leader, Robyn. But at this stage of his career, he can't be playing top line minutes along with Connor Bedard. So for the numbers that he put up last year and also how he handled all the pressure, I think it was a really smashing year. And quite honestly, now it's just time for him to really pick up where he left off and take advantage of the new help that this Blackhawks front office has brought in, whether that comes in the form of a Teuvo Teravainen who's returning, or maybe it's Tyler Bertuzzi, or maybe even Philip Kurashev sticks around. Maybe Taylor Hall comes back off of injury and gets that job. We don't exactly know who it's going to be, but undoubtedly, Robyn, the Blackhawks top six, the top nine, their power play is going to be much more talented than it's been, particularly than last year in Bedard's first year. And it's just, he's got to take advantage of that. And I think the biggest kind of growth that we saw from Bedard last year was in particular in his first hockey IQ, and that really translated, I think, over to the playmaking abilities. He was a little bit of a one-trick pony early on last year, and in terms of his goal scoring was really the thing that translated over immediately. But as the year went on, and again, he didn't have a lot of help around him, but he really developed those playmaking abilities, started to take over on the power play, started to recognize how defenders were going to kind of attack him and to find those open teammates. So now it's just kind of putting it all together with having a little bit of more talent around him. I don't necessarily want to go and put any numbers on Connor Bedard, but I think we'll all know what we're kind of wanting to see from him. It's just taking that next step. Another big thing I think is remaining healthy, right? Missed some time last year due to a fractured jaw, and quite honestly, there was a little bit of controversy over that hit. I had no problem with that hit. That's just one of those situations where Connor Bedard's got to keep his head up. He's a smaller guy, and people are going to be hunting him. So just continuing to learn, cliche, but getting better day in and day out. But I think the biggest thing is just to continue to really take control of this team now that he has some better pieces alongside him.
One of the other things that that's always thought about to me is how each team focuses, looks on the specific way they address the rebuild and exactly how they're going to do that. From your perspective, what's it look like that Chicago is focusing on going through their rebuild?
Yeah, so first, when Kyle Davidson stepped in as the general manager a couple of years ago, he pretty much tore it down and really accumulated as many assets as he could. And now we're kind of starting to see the positive effect of that. The Blackhawks have, by most accounts, a top three, if not the best prospect pool in the entire NHL. That's when you put Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski in there, who are probably not considered prospects, but under 22, Blackhawks, San Jose, Anaheim. I think those are kind of the big three that a lot of people talk about. And now we're starting to see some of those guys step onto the scene. At this point in time, what it feels like, though, Robyn, is first off, they recognize that they've really been testing the fan base these last couple of years, and it's kind of time to take that next step. I don't think they're wanting to rush anything, or I don't think they're getting in over their heads and expecting to make the playoffs, but they know they need to get better. They need to start winning games. And just based on all the moves that they made this offseason, bringing in some of the veterans that I mentioned earlier, Teravainen, Bertuzzi, of course, got free agent deals, Alec Martinez and TJ Brody on the back end, even Laurent Brossoit to serve as the backup goaltender, right? Like, that's really rounding out this team now. And I think the next thing for the rebuild is to really go from this quantity perspective that Kyle Davidson entered the rebuild with into quality. That's really where the Blackhawks are at. They have a deep prospect pool, and they have a couple of key guys at the forward position, at the defensive spot. but it's just about rounding out those prospect pools with a couple more high-end guys. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that in the draft these next couple of years, because I, knock on wood, hope they're going to be getting better. But it feels like those might be some holes, those high-end players. Those might be some free agent additions or trade additions, and using some of the assets, the draft picks, or some of the, middle tier prospects to kind of use in trade capital and kind of fill this team and put all the puzzle pieces together. That's really what's kind of missing right now, Robyn. Outside of Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar is a high-end prospect up front, but they still don't have a ton of like super skilled forwards for the future. And that's, why I kind of wanted them to take Ivan Demidov second overall. That's a conversation for another day, but that's really where we're looking at for the Blackhawks rebuild at this point in time. They just need a couple more quality players on the high end, I think, to take this team from being middling into playoff contenders once again, like they want to be.
Since you somewhat kind of brought it up, the draft pick that Chicago did take in Artem Levshunov, is there an expectation he's going to, of how is it, what's he going to look like next year? I don't know if maybe he's going to be on the roster or not, but how's it going to look?
Yeah, so he did forego his sophomore season at Michigan State to make the leap to pro hockey. The expectation is probably for him to be in Rockford for the majority, if not all of the season, down in the AHL. He was actually, Robyn, supposed to play in the prospect showcase that the Blackhawks are in over the weekend in St. Louis, but is out with a right foot injury and is expected to miss a couple of weeks. It was a long shot for him to make the Blackhawks. I mean, like a real long shot. He would have had to been a standout in training camp for him to have made the NHL roster. The Blackhawks have a lot of bodies on the blue line ahead of him. But now, because of the injury, it's even more likely that he's going to be going down to Rockford. But I think that's a good place for him. The Blackhawks have developed a couple of defensemen nicely down there these last couple of years. Alex Vlasic had a phenomenal rookie year last year. It was kind of wasn't my favorite draft pick in particular, Robyn, because like I mentioned earlier, I wanted them to go with Ivan Demidov. But if it wasn't going to be him, I did believe that it was going to be Levshunov. I felt like he deserved to be the first defenseman off the board. I think he has a really high future, and I think he really is just scratching the surface in terms of like getting acclimated. He's only been over in North America for like a year and a half, and really had a whirlwind leading into his freshman year, which was a very standout season. But it's going to be interesting to watch his development over these next couple of years, along with Ivan Demidov's in Montreal, and kind of comparing where these two prospects are at, which I'm sure people are going to be doing for, 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
People always love to analyze those draft picks, don't they?
Oh my goodness. It might be the favorite of an NHL armchair GMs. We're like, why didn't you take that guy? I mean, we're still getting crap about Kirby Dach in 2019, but it's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
It happens. Hey, a lot of people talk about the Coyotes in years back in Strome over Marner. So
I recall. Things happen. We've been on the wrong end of them, both of us, and I'm sure it'll happen. Unfortunately, it happens to the best of them in this game and in every league, Robyn. But segment 3, we're coming up on that in just a moment here. Make sure to stay tuned, as Robyn and I are going to be breaking down what things could be looking like in the Central Division for this upcoming season. But first, real quick, I got to talk to you all about Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, but match with Indeed. And if you need to hire, then you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates in an instant. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And one of the things that I personally love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so simple and so easy, because you can skip out on the countless job sites that ask you unnecessary info and don't wind up leading you anywhere. Instead, go and join the more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent in an instant. And listeners of this show, you will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility if you go and check out Indeed.com Indeed.com/lockedon. Again, a $75 sponsored job credit that'll get your job post more visibility if you go and check out Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Do you need a hire? Then you need Indeed. All right, segment 3. Before we wrap things up, a little Central Division chatter. Robyn, I think it is going to be a rather interesting year for the Central Division. As I told you off air before we recorded, I've had a couple of crossovers with other Central Division hosts, and I think most of us still feel that Colorado is the head honcho, even though there's a lot of question marks about Gabriel Landeskog, as there's been ever since they won the Stanley Cup. But other than that, it kind of feels like things are really up for grabs, and there could be potentially a passing of the torch, changing of the guard-like situation happening in the Central Division. Maybe not necessarily this year, but coming soon. I'm kind of curious, how do you see your outlook of the Central Division right now? First, just starting at the top, which teams do you expect to see there at the top of this division this year in the Central, along with, I'm guessing, Colorado?
If you look at the top 3, to me, I feel like the top 3, I feel like I'm pretty confident in knowing who they're going to be. The next going to be pretty close behind, but yeah, you're right. Colorado is certainly going to be up there. I still feel like they're still going to be number 1. I feel like it's going to be quite a bit until they actually start falling, but
Agreed.
they're still up there. They are still up there. They still got some really high end talent.
The interesting question is, though, who you have at number 2.
So that's the interesting thing. Here's the thing. I feel like my 2 and 3, I feel like I can swap depending on my mood, right? But as of right now, it is a Dallas, Nashville 2 and 3. I feel like Dallas is still it's really good team. And hey, look, we're talking about a team that has multiple times made it deep into the Stanley Cup playoffs, to the Western Conference Finals, to maybe just right before there. Like, they look really, really good. And Nashville is just in win now mode. They are beefing up. You look at all the pickups that they made over the offseason, you're like, yeah, this team wants to win.
Yeah, they finally made the push after being in limbo for seemingly ever. Finally put all their chips in the go for it basket, which I'll give a tip of the hat to Barry Trotz for finally picking a direction. But I have the same thoughts about the top 3. I will say, though, I am admittedly, maybe this is foolish, I am more confident in Nashville than I am Dallas. Based on the offseason moves that Dallas made, I personally wouldn't be surprised if they took a little bit of a step back to where they've been these last couple of years. Now, with that said, it is still a veteran group. There's a lot of guys who have been there and done that, and I absolutely love Jake Ottinger. It's been a big reason why I've been high on the Dallas Stars these last couple of years. Not this past season, but the prior 2, I had them winning the Stanley Cup in each of those seasons because I loved what they have on their blue line plus the goaltending combo. But I didn't really love the offseason that they had, and I think Nashville, probably not a hot take here. I think Nashville probably had the best offseason of anyone, or at least the most active. They made big-time moves.
Yeah.
So I have Nashville in that number 2 spot as of right now, but I do still have the Dallas Stars in that top 3. But outside of that, to me, it's a whole lot of question marks. St. Louis, who knows? They have some talent, but they haven't been able to piece it together these last few years.
They're weird. They're a weird team.
They love spending money that just doesn't make sense to spend money. And I respect them making those offer sheets, quite honestly. But to go and pay, why am I forgetting the defenseman's name who they just claimed off the offer sheet? Do you know who I'm talking about? It's going to drive me crazy. From the Edmonton Oilers, he was a former Broberg. They gave Philip Broberg $4.1 million. And I'm like, this is a team that has learned nothing. Long-term money in tenure has ruined this team from ever having a chance of repeating what they did in 2019. They continue to throw out dough. I don't know. I feel like they could be the next Nashville Predators in limbo for quite a while. I feel like they're not bottom level. They have Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, but I don't see them competing for the top of the division either.
No, I'm not sold on St. Louis either. I kind of have them probably floating at that 5 spot, so maybe they might squeak in the playoffs. But I have them floating around there just because there are just so many question marks about them. I just don't know exactly where that's going to be. And you're right. They're spending money where they shouldn't, like where they don't have to. And it's like, do you really want to get into cap hell? That's going to make things even worse. So that's going to be like, okay, you can't make it to your max, and then you're going to just falter down and become the next San Jose Sharks and just go all the way down to the bottom.
Right. So, Robyn, the last thing I'll kind of bring up, and I'll turn it over to you for your thoughts on where you see Utah finishing in this division. I don't expect the Blackhawks to creep into playoff conversation this year, right? I think they're going to be a hard group to play against. I still think they lack that true upside. My goal, though, the Blackhawks just can't finish last this year. That will be a failure if they finish last in this division once again this year. What are kind of your expectations for this Utah Hockey Club in their inaugural season, shaping up with the rest of the Central Division teams?
Yeah, so, to me, I think based on the trajectory that Utah has been, dating back to what the past couple of years for Arizona, if you look at Arizona's first half of last year, they were phenomenal. They had everything going right. They beat everyone they shouldn't have beat, and we're in the playoff conversation. I feel like we're going to see a similar thing. Maybe they're not going to just come out full swing ahead, but I have no doubt that this Utah team will probably be in the playoff conversation for a lot longer than the last year's Arizona team. I don't think they'll make it. I think they'll just be on the outside looking in, but they're getting there. I've made this comment, and my co-host Tom, he has talked about it many times too, is give this Utah team about 2 years and they're in the playoffs, and they're going to be a competitive team in the playoffs.
Well, I think right now
they're right outside. They're just barely right outside.
I think in a couple of years down the road, though, we could be looking at more promising days and perhaps Central Division playoff battles between these two franchises. I know both of us have been dying for those days to come, hopefully sooner rather than later. But, Robyn, just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to join me on this crossover here today. For those on the Blackhawks side of things who are tuning into this episode, whether it be through video or audio, please go ahead and let them know where they can check you and the show out throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. The show, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including on Apple, on YouTube. We're ad-free if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber on Amazon Music. You can follow us on social media, on X, on Threads, Instagram, at LO_NHL Utah. We're also on TikTok if you want to follow us there. It's at LO_Utah Hockey. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano. That's Robyn with the Y_Leano. And my co-host, Tom Callahan, who's not on today, but you see him on any of my shows for everydayers. He is at Callahan on air.
And for anyone from the Utah side of things who wants to check me out or Locked On Blackhawks throughout the course of this year, you can find the show on X or any social media channel at LO_Blackhawks. Me personally, you can find me on X at Jack Bushman too. Robyn, been a lot of fun. Looking forward to chatting again, maybe even a crossover before the season opener on, I think it's October 12th, I believe.
October 8th.
October 8th. Thank you very much. Could be in the future. We'll definitely be in touch about it. But looking forward to our next chat whenever it may be. And everyone who tuned in, thank you for catching in on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks and Locked On Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.